Needless Things Podcast. Hey, Phantomaniacs, welcome to the newest episode of the Needless Things Podcast, where we talk about toys, movies, music, and all manner of pop culture dorkery. I am your host, Dave, and this week's episode brings you a very cool interview with the one-woman army, I Ya Toyah. I met her at the Pigface show. She was the opening act up on stage all by herself, playing keyboards, playing guitar, singing, providing an AV show all alone. And it was awesome, and I was very impressed with her. We went and spoke to her at the merch table, bought a couple of things, got her album Code Blue, which you can get at her Bandcamp site. And I gave her a business card and told her I'd love to talk to her on the show, and heard back a few weeks later that she enjoyed the show, and I said, you want to come on? And here we go. So we have a great interview where I talk to her about just music and how she's gotten to where she is, and creation and motivation and all the things that we find fascinating here on the Needless Things Podcast. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you about a few little news bites. I've been enjoying doing these little introductory news segments lately, so I'm going to kick it off by pointing out that New York International Toy Fair is February 22nd through the 25th this year. Our coverage will go up the Friday immediately following. I've already sort of set down our recording date to do our episode covering it. And something that I'll go ahead and tell you guys, I guess. You noticed that I'm pretty much not writing for needlessthingspodcast.com anymore. We'll still be doing the podcast every single week. Every Friday you'll get a new episode. I'm expecting more mini-casts to be coming your way. But as a matter of fact, a new one went up this week reviewing Mondo's 12-inch 1/6 scale Scare Glow figure from Masters of the Universe. So you can go check that out on Podbean, which is... like, you can find us on Podbean, but you can also find us everywhere you find podcasts. Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, the Podbean app, which is actually where I listen to a lot of my favorite shows. Seeking Human Victims and the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast are both on Podbean, which is nice. And Double Edge, Double Bill, which I will be recording for tonight, and I don't know when it's going to go up. It might be next Friday, but of course, stay tuned to all of my social media and to this very show, and I'll let you know when that happens. I don't know if I can tell you what we're talking about or not, but I do dig that show, and I'm excited to be talking to our pal from DragonCon, Thomas Mariani. So that'll be very cool. But so I stopped writing, basically. I mean, from time to time, I'm sure something will catch my fancy, and I'll put fingers to keys and crank a little something out. But a lot of factors went into it, and one of them was this year, I finally decided, you know what, I'm going to go to Toy Fair if I can. I'll figure it out. I'll get up to New York. I know a few people up there, and just finally go to Toy Fair, something I've wanted to do for years, really a decade. The whole time I have been running a website and doing a podcast. It's something that I've really wanted to do, and I went and looked, and I probably should have gone ahead and applied anyway, but they want your metrics or whatever for your podcast, your website, whatever it is you're doing. They want your numbers. They want your clicks. They want your hits. And what Needless Things gets is nowhere near what they want to give somebody a press pass. And, of course, this is a closed convention. So you either have to be a toy manufacturer, or you have to be press, or you have to be like a celebrity type person to get into this thing. So It was, I probably should have tried anyway, because you never know, but I saw that number and I was like, man, that's just not going to happen. Let's not go through this whole process. It was a little discouraging, but at the same time, there's a certain amount of peace in knowing sort of where you're at, I guess, and anytime a door closes, other things open, other opportunities present themselves. And even though I'd planned to take it easy this year, there are already a couple of opportunities that have popped up that I'm going to take advantage of and that I'm excited for. So we'll see where the year goes. But regardless, our Toy Fair coverage will be here at the end of February. And one of the biggest, most interesting developments that I'm going to be looking at Toy Fair, Hasbro is working with Jazzwares on G.I. Joe products. Now, I mentioned to you guys last week or the week before that Hasbro has assigned somebody to be in charge of an entire new G.I. Joe line, and it's very interesting that they're licensing G.I. Joe out to Haswares to work on products. This came from our pals over at histank.com, who are the same ones that broke the news about there being a brand manager for G.I. Joe, and chances are this is going to be something along the lines of what Jazzwares has done with the Fortnite license, doing sort of role-play items. This is what I would expect. We'll see what happens. And I do think that Toy Fair might be a little bit early, because this all seems to be fairly recent news. It mostly seems to be sort of 2020 news, and I'm not sure if by Toy Fair they'll really have anything to report, but certainly by San Diego Comic-Con, I would expect there to be some pretty major announcements and products to show. So G.I. Joe is back. The brand manager news was cool, but it's kind of like, well, we'll see what happens. But this is actually bringing another company in to work on the license, which is a very different situation. This is other people are involved, so we'll see where that goes. And I'm not necessarily interested in Jazzwares products. I don't think there'll be figures. I think Hasbro will handle that themselves. But it's just good news. This is another step in revitalizing one of the franchises that I love the most. And speaking of G.I. Joe, another awesome thing is Super Impulse, who are right now creating some of the coolest little toys you'll see in like Target and Walmart. Well, actually, I haven't seen them in Walmart, but I've seen them in Target, which is fine, because wouldn't we all rather go to Target anyway? Super Impulse makes little tiny versions of toys that we know and love. As a matter of fact, sitting here on my desk right now, hang on just a second. All right, I hope you were able to hear that. What that is a little tiny Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles pinball video game. It's sized for G.I. Joe figures. If I put Snake Eyes or Shipwreck or whoever in front of this, it would be perfectly scaled to G.I. Joe figures. So I guess that's about 1/18 scale, but it's beautiful. It has this the display, I didn't mean to turn that on again, but the display is actually like animated. I thought it was going to be like the old school, if you remember the Nintendo Game & Watch that had the little black and gray screen. I thought it was going to be like that. This is a full color, like beautiful screen that this thing has on it. It's great. So Super Impulse does things like that. Well, they are also doing a line of 1.25-inch G.I. Joe action figures, complete with accessories, as insane as that sounds. And they are the real American hero G.I. Joes. Now, we've seen a lot of times in the past these sorts of things come out, and they're like Army, Marine, Navy, Air Force. Like, they're not characters that we know. They're very generic. This is actual real American hero characters. The first 3 releases are Duke, Roadblock, and Snake Eyes. Like I said, they each come with all of their original accessories, just super tiny. They have very limited articulation, obviously, but at that size, you're not going to have knees and elbows, but they've got waist and shoulder. It looks to me like they have waist, shoulder, and neck swivels, which is it's fine. Now, these aren't necessarily something I would have wanted, but then when you read further down into the product announcement, you see that each one of them comes on a tiny replica of their original blister card, complete with the file card and the original artwork. That is so charming, my pants are just off. It's unbelievable. Like, just thinking about having these little things lined up on the wall. I don't even know where you'd put them. I can't put them on the wall because a push pin's going to be bigger than the figures are. But I'm absolutely going to get these things if I find them. I'm excited about them, as I'm excited about any new G.I. Joe product, especially Real American Hero. And then finally, our last news bite is there is a new trailer for Fox's long-beleaguered New Mutants movie. Now, I have to admit that I find it hard to get too excited about any Fox X-Men mutant films after the last few X-Men movies, but this one looks really, really cool. Tonally, it looks like it's something very appropriate and specific to the New Mutants. And, of course, the creative team is very different from any that have worked on these movies before. It's being directed by Josh Boone, written by Josh Boone and Nate Lee, who I know the name Josh Boone. I can't think off the top of my head what else he's worked on. I don't even know if he's worked on anything that I've seen, but it's a new name. It's a new, exciting name. And the cast, though, is what initially won me over. You have Maisie Williams as Rain, Anya Taylor-Joy as Ilyana, Charlie Heaton as Sam Guthrie, Alicia Braga as Cecilia Reyes, Blue Hunt as Danny, Henry Zaga as Sunspot, and, of course, the Demon Bear, which they sort of played a little shy about whether or not this was going to be a Demon Bear story. But it absolutely, apparently is, and man, I couldn't be more excited about this thing, especially after seeing the new trailer, because it looked like after the Disney acquisition that New Mutants might never come out or might be released in some low-key way, which, granted, I still would have watched it, but it's getting the theatrical release. Now, on Wikipedia, it says April 3rd. The trailer just says 2020, so I don't know how concrete that April 3rd is, but if you go look for the most recent New Mutants trailer, it's great. It shows a lot of powers. It shows the Demon Bear. It shows the tone of the movie. It shows the personality of the characters. Ilyana and Rain particularly seem spot on. I'm very excited for this thing. I hope that it's kind of a nice final send-off for it's. I don't know that it's necessarily part of the previous Fox X-Men franchise, but there was some good and some bad in that franchise. But there's no doubt it's a legendary entry into the pantheon of comic book movies, and it'll be nice if sort of the final work can be something great, and possibly even something that Disney in the future can build off of. This is a young cast. This is an exciting concept, and it would be really neat if Disney could say, well, this is sort of low-key, but it did well. It's interesting. People seem to like it. Let's build off of this and start it, instead of starting completely fresh whenever we do bring mutants in. Because that's the thing I always loved about Marvel's mutants is you obviously had some primary characters like Storm and Wolverine, but the teams were different all the time. You didn't have to have the same protagonists every single story arc. So New Mutants, I'm very excited about it. Maybe April 3rd, but I have not seen anything that's official. As we all know, Wikipedia is far from official. So there you go. That's our news. That's really everything that's been going on. It's a new year so far. The new year has been pretty good to me. I have no complaints. And like I said, opportunities already opening up that I have to choose to say yes or no to. And I, once again, am probably going to end up saying yes, because when somebody appreciates you and somebody wants your particular style or brand or whatever on something, it's really hard to turn that down. So, guys, sit back, get ready for a fascinating conversation with a great artist. And here is a little something from her album, Code Blue. This is the title track, Code Blue. Ladies and gentlemen, I Ya Toyah.
It makes sense when you are Polish like me, because when spoken out loud, this name in Polish means it's just me.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah, so it's not in writing. In writing, it makes no sense in Polish, but the way you speak it, when you speak it out loud, that's where Polish people are like, wow, wait, it sounds like it's just me.
I Ya Toyah.
I Ya Toyah. Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly. Wow.
Excellent. All right. Okay, so the first thing I want to ask you about, because I became aware of you because you were opening for Pigface.
Yes.
Which is crazy. I've been following them for decades, like so many people have. But you blew me away at that show because Pigface, widely known as like one of the largest industrial acts. They have like a dozen people on stage sometimes. And then, but before they go on, you go up there and it's just you. This amazing one-woman show, powerful, doing the program, and you'll have to explain the technical side of the electronics, but picking up the guitar, doing everything yourself with this full like audio-visual show. And it just struck me as so powerful that this singular person was opening up for this band.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, it's definitely, a different approach of band concept. So, Pigface is a different approach of band concept because they gather so many people on stage. It is definitely a non-classical way of taking a band as we know it, right? Yeah. Normally the band is 4 or 5 piece. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 6. But this is a monstrosity, right? The Pigface is a monstrosity of a band. And so part of, the twisted idea here was that I am also a band, but I'm on different spectrum of it. I'm a one-person band. So, yeah.
Well, and it's what impressed me is I think when you're performing with a band, you sort of have these other people up on stage with you to share energy with and to share, I guess that anxiety, because any time I've been on stage, there's always a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of performance. Oh, I'm in front of people, going up there by yourself is a whole different creature. But going up there by yourself and also doing all of the things that you were doing, singing and playing and taking care of the presentation, because your style of music is a different stage presentation from a traditional band.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, it is. It has its challenges, and I've been doing it for a year now. So I started, my first show was on November 10th, 2018. So it's been a little over a year. So when you saw me, it was like exactly a year since I started doing it. And it's definitely completely different approach to performing than with bands. But I guess to me, the biggest thing is that I just love performing. I have no stage fear, and I enjoy it so much. It's like an addiction. So, so this being said, applying all those other skills and making sure that I can do them in timely manner and keep them organized and know, when what comes and what I need to do next. It took me some time. It took me several months to actually program and to prepare and to practice till I was ready to go for my first show. And then from there, it was just, practicing those skills and getting better at multitasking, because that's what essentially this whole thing is. It's a lot of multitasking.
Yeah, obviously. Like, I couldn't believe it when I was like, no, somebody should be handing her that guitar. Why is she walking over there to get it herself?
So I've heard this from some people. Actually, I think it was in Austin. Someone from the audience came up to my merch booth after my show, and they said, I wish that one day you can afford the musicians. And I was thinking about this, like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
It's denying the whole idea of one-woman army, which I market myself as right now. And I used to be in bands, and I used to be part of bigger projects, and I still am. I still do a bunch of collaborations, and I definitely don't deny the overall love to stage life, whether it is with the band or just on my own. But this was challenging, and this was something new, and I wanted to do this the way it is, just because it feels like there is not many one person projects out there that would do what I do.
Well, and also when it's just you, because while it's nice to have collaborators, it's also a different kind of challenge because you have to coordinate with other people. Everyone has to be on the same page. Everyone has to share responsibility. So it's probably got to be also kind of freeing to be, you're the one in charge, you're the one doing it.
Oh, mine. It's like you are reading my mind and my life story. Because that's where it came from. The essential, I Ya Toyah as it is today came from being disappointed, basically, in projects that I used to have. And it's nothing personal, it is just how it is. It's life. So my level of passion and commitment is just very up there. And I'm ready to do things, and I want to do things, and I take joy and pride in doing things. And it, involves a lot of hours of hard work. And not everyone is able to give this time and this, sacrifice. So what it came down to was that, with bands, I was always feeling slowed down. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't do what I wanted to do the way I wanted to do because everyone was taking their time. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you are on the same page. And I guess I was always the one that wanted to do things faster, and I really just wanted to do them. I wanted to tour, I wanted to play, I wanted to record. So at this point, I realized, it's either me changing something and figuring out how to do it on my own, or I will forever be stuck in this slow down motion that is just not good for me. So, what happened is what you saw.
And that's amazing. This is resonating so much with me right now because over the past probably year or so, nothing musical, but other projects that I've done that involve working with other people, it's tough because the dedication may not be the same, the vision may not be the same, and it's hard. When you enjoy people's talents and they incorporate with what you're doing, but you can recognize that they're not as invested, that's a tough thing to deal with, and it's discouraging to your own creativity.
Oh, definitely, yes. It's definitely not only slowing down the process as it is, visible to the outer world, but it's also slowing down your inner part of creativity, as you say, which is not good, Right now, doing what I do, the only person that can slow me down is me, which is great. I mean, I really like the way things are right now.
Well, and you posted something very interesting. I think it was on Instagram the other day about peace versus pace.
Oh, yeah.
And that also really got me because it's a hard balance to find.
Yeah, it is. And I'm not sure if you know this, but I'm a huge advocate for mental health and suicide prevention. And my first album that I written, recorded, and produced at home on my own, called Blue Album, this album is supporting suicide prevention, and it talks about mental struggle and the darkness and, in the form that it does. But that post on Instagram the other day that you saw, it basically touches this very issue that I feel each of us have. It is that pace versus peace, and how much should we be running. And especially, I feel like after holidays and with the new year coming up and the new decade, of expectations, because that's what it is. We come up to the new year and we have all those expectations, all those resolutions, all those ideas of how great we are going to be now, right? So we are, facing this kind of dilemma. Should I focus on my mental health, on peace, on taking it easy? Or should I go all the way in and work, and focus on those things and on goals and on, what I aim to do? And that's why I did write this. I wanted to encourage a conversation and see what people think about this, because I myself struggle with this every day. It's like, do I dive in and do I restlessly? I could get restless. I really could. Or do I remember that you can get burned out and that this has a toll somewhere in the process. So, so that's what it was.
Well, and I've got Code Blue right here in my hand now. Bought it from you at the show, and I've listened to it a couple times, and there are a few things I want to talk about. But right here on the back, as you said, 15% of this album sale goes to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
Yes.
And I saw that. I thought that was very important. And as you said, I think some of the themes of the album come through. But to go back to Peace versus Pace, I think it's about knowing or getting to know yourself and admitting where you're at different times, because I think sometimes it's time to slow down and put more thought into where you are and what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes, though, you have that energy, and the listeners, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, where that fire gets lit inside you, and you feel like you can do anything. And you don't have that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But
Exactly.
the times when you do feel that way, that's 100% like time to go. You got to get on stuff, get stuff done, but recognize when that flame is wavering a little bit, and pay attention to that and take care of yourself for a little while and maybe ease back.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And also directing it in the right way, where there are different places you can put your energy into, right? So knowing where to give that energy into, which target,
Yeah, and that's hard to recognize sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Especially today, there is so much going on and there is so much noise. There are social media. There are, just so many outlets, right? So it's easy to get lost and to forget about what we are about. Mm-hmm.
Well, before we get too much into what's going on now, let's talk about your roots, where you came from, how you became a musician and a fan of music. Where did you start?
So I was told that I started when I was born. Literally. I was told many times by my parents and my big sister that I was singing always. I was always loving music. I would only fall asleep if there was a classical music playing, apparently. So there was always a connection. I don't remember this, but when I was 2, I already took part in some competition on the vacation. And I won this, apparently. I don't even know because I don't remember, but I have pictures of that. Me with microphone when I was barely walking.
Oh, wow.
and then, yes, I've always had that. So all those preschools, school time, I've always liked to sing. And that was just something with me. And it was there. It was on and off, so I would focus on different things and go back to it. But music was always in me, and very, very strongly. When I was 5, I picked up my big sister's guitar, and I just started to learn on my own. The guitar was giant, so I could barely keep it in my hands because I was just 5. And it was a big guitar for, my sister was a teenager then. And yeah, I picked it up and I started learning those basic chords and I was 7, I was performing at school already, singing and playing.
Looking back, where do you think, because all kids are different, all kids want to do different things, but as a kid, where do you think that drive came from? Just an enthusiasm to be able to create the things that you'd heard?
I think that it was my sister, because she was also into music and she would always sing. She actually was in a band, but it's completely different, opposite direction. She was in a blues band, so blues rock, kind of style. But she was always writing and playing and singing, and I guess that's how it started. That's what I think, but that's only what I can recall. Now reaching back to what I was told, so the fact that I was singing before I remember makes me think that maybe that's something in my genes, in my blood. I don't know. I don't know, because there is no history of my family having anyone significantly musically inclined, so I don't know.
Well, and I think there is a lot to nature. I think that a lot of talent, a lot of the way we are, is just somehow biologically in us.
Yeah.
There may be things that we learn, things that we pick up, but I think as far as creative arts, I guess, music, drawing, filmmaking, things like that, you can learn them, but I think there's something innate that we're just born with that draws us to them if it's something we want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I agree with this. Definitely. It must be. Because how else? I mean, you cannot force someone to be creative.
No.
So, yeah.
So, not originally from Chicago.
You can hear it, right? In the accent.
It's just a guess.
I'm trying to think, if anyone even understands what I'm saying, because I know that I have an accent. So,
well, it's very, very clear English, though. There is an accent, but no more so than somebody from a different region of America. So it's no problem at all.
Thank you. Funny thing is that I speak very fast, and right now I'm trying to not speak very fast, but I am known in person to be very talkative and to just talk very fast. A lot of times people tell me, slow down, I don't know what you're saying. So I'm really trying to keep remembering this.
Well, you're at a good pace now. So where is that accent from?
It's from Poland. So
okay.
I'm originally Polish, proudly. Love Poland. I think it's a beautiful country, great people, beautiful nature. And yes, I come from Poland. I moved to States in 2006, and I was still traveling back and forth because I had schools that I had to finish. But yeah, that's how that's where I'm from. That's the roots. And then I decided to stay in America. I really liked the way life is here. It's different. It feels more free in many ways. And for creative arts, it's definitely the better place to be than Poland.
Because I have very little experience with foreign countries at all. I'm very much a hometown guy. I've been a few places, but not many. But culturally, is music received differently there, or popular music? Like what would be some of the differences sort of between the countries?
I don't know about much of a difference. Poland has its underground, and a lot of music that we do here and we like here is popular there as well. There is a lot of underground creativity going on in Poland as well, and it's awesome. The quality of music there is absolutely mind-blowing. A lot of talent. A lot of forces that are just, I feel comparable, with what we got in States as long as creativity and talent goes. But I don't think there is any restrictions to what is admired there and versus what's admired here. There is a, big pop culture scene as well in there. And it's also similar to what we got in States and worldwide, really. I feel ever since, the world globalized and Poland became more open to the idea of Western culture, which, I don't really remember or know it before. But it was the process of adaptation. And even in 2000s, it was still significant that Poland is learning those, customs and those this new open world that Western world brought. But I don't know. I don't think there is that I can tell you much about the difference in the culture when it comes to the music, because I feel like it depends on people and on what they like. And there are different people everywhere, including Poland. So there are fans of metal music, and metal scene is huge in Poland. But then there is an industrial scene that is sort of niche, just like here. And then there is a pop scene, obviously, more popular because that's what the radios and big companies promote. But other than this, I would say it's very, very relevant, very similar.
Well, and especially now with, in the internet age, we all
Yeah.
have access to the same things now. It's made the world much smaller. As many divides as there still are, we at least have the opportunity to get on the same page now.
Exactly, which is great. I feel like, with pluses and minuses of this globalization, of media globalization, I feel that this is actually a huge bonus for everybody because at least we get to see and we get to choose what we like now.
Yes.
Yeah.
There were great things about, the top 40 world of the 80s where everybody kind of knew all the music, but now we're getting exposed to so many different kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's easy to get sort of stuck in your own little niche, but other things are discoverable.
Exactly. So it depends on you solemnly whether you want to go out of your way, which is not really out of your way because it's right there. It's within a click. So, it depends on the particular person whether they want to browse and find something new or they just want to stay loyal and like within what they feel familiar with and just be there. Whether it's this or that, I feel the most important is that we feel fulfilled with our music world and, those media opportunities that we have these days.
Now, speaking of opportunity, have you had the opportunity to go back and perform in Poland?
So I did not perform in Poland, but I went back recently, actually. It was for family and for some business stuff to basically settle some potential performances in the future. So, yeah, I definitely want to go back and perform, but I would not want to go back just to Poland. So if I go back, I would like to make it European tour where I would go and visit multiple countries, including Netherlands and the Scandinavian countries and Germany, France, a couple more. So we will see. We will see how it goes. I'm preparing my setup for this possibility and for future ability to be able to do this because the setup, that I currently have is very big and definitely not easy to take over the ocean.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Code Blue. It's been out since, was it May of last year?
So it was actually Code Blue itself came out in October 2018.
Okay.
Yes, and then a couple of remixes of that album came out, and the remix album, the whole album, will be coming out in March this year, March 20th. So I'm very excited about that because it's a different approach of Code Blue. It's like a Code Blue, but reloaded. I actually called this album Reloaded. So it's a different perspective on all those songs.
So how did you get to the point, the creative process, where you obviously had been making music for a while and you said, you know what, I've got 10 songs, they're ready to go, I'm happy with them, I want to put them out in the world. What was your process of getting those songs to the point where you were happy with them, you were ready to put the album together and release it and say, look, this is my stuff, check it out?
Oh, wow. So it was completely different because I was working with bands and, in the process of working with bands, I learned that this is not for me anymore. People would quit and leave me with, just half of the band and I would have to look for another, let's say, bass player.
Yeah.
And it was the moment when it hit me that, wow, I could look for another bass player or I could do something else. And don't get me wrong, I always have been creative music-wise and I finished music schools, learning piano and guitar and vocal performance, but I've never done any production. So this album was my test fields. It was the testing grounds for producing music. It was the first thing I've ever done this way. So it was not like I've been making music for a while this way. I decided one day that I just want to try and produce my own album because I don't want to be slowed down anymore. And I just want to give what I have in me and put it out there. So the process was a bit more complex because I had to literally learn how to produce, how to, make electronic music. And I come from more of a metal, of an organic world when it comes to the sound and approaching it. So digitalizing it and making it so that I could then afterwards perform it on my own was a challenge, a huge challenge for me. But I did it, and those 10 songs came to be. And then I had a great friend of mine and very talented guy, Brad Pack, who is actually, bachelor in audio production, mix and master them for me. And he's, he gave me such great feedback on my stuff that I was, before I wouldn't believe in my stuff much. And then he gave me this feedback and I'm like, wow, maybe something can be of this. Let's see. And and off I went. I started with promoting first titled track called Blue, and then the second one, and then the third single with the main album release at the end of 2018. And it slowly, it got the good response, so I was mind blown. I did not expect to get that.
Well, it's very, your vocals, first of all, are what strike me the most. And it's interesting that you say you came from sort of a metal background, because that melodic, I love, especially with industrial music or electronic music, that combination of a nice melodic voice that can also sort of growl and get angry.
Yeah.
That to me is when I think of the industrial stuff because I'm 43 years old. I've been listening to this stuff for a long time now, and some of my favorite acts have that. I really like that feminine vocal presence that can also get very dark, I guess. Yes, but so I would never be able to perform or write or just do any happy-go-lucky music. And you met me in person and you probably got the vibe. I'm a very positive person. And in life, I can be that happy-go-lucky, and that's who I am. But in music, it's almost like there is this outlet for all the darkness in me that is left of being happy-go-lucky, and that's where music serves. And I like darker approach in music a lot, and that's what fulfills me, that's what makes me happy. So the ability to be able to sing powerful vocals and then do some of the growl, some of more aggressive singing is letting me do this and find this fulfillment, in performance and in creativity. Well, and also a good maniacal laugh, you drop into Puppet, is a great thing to have as well. Definitely, yeah. I like it. It's all natural, though. It's funny how I'm just having fun, and while I'm having fun, the ability of being able to share this with others is just something absolutely amazing. I cannot state enough how grateful I feel for being able to do this. So let's talk a little bit about some of your influences, because you are I would say, it sounds like you're an educated musical person. You mentioned when you first got started listening to classical music, your sister playing in a blues band. But for you personally, what over the years as you've discovered music and different types of music, what kinds of things have made you say, oh, I like that, and that makes me want to create? Oh, wow, it's very hard. I've always struggled with what I would define as my favorite, just because there is so much in there, so much out there that I love. So I could start with classical, with some of the Mozart, like Requiem, darker classical music that is very much in me and very much inspires me on daily basis. But then there is things like Aretha Franklin, which I'm not sure you would ever even guess, because it's R&B and it's, bluesy and it's soul. And her vocals are
mind-blowing to me. I've always been very inspired by her style, by her, joyful approach to the music, and the powerful vocals as well, the range of that woman and the way she could take those notes and make them just absolutely mind-blowingly amazing. Then there is Sade, which, again, for industrial musician, it's not something you will ever hear. But that's what inspired me in the first place. I was very young when I discovered her, and I've always loved her smooth, warm vocals. They were almost calming and just wrapping your soul around with this fuzzy feeling. I would say that that's something that I would like to do to others with my voice on a lot of occasions. Now there is a lot of metal acts, and that's like, and I can't even begin. The metal music is a huge thing for me in my life, and I've always listened to dark and heavy music. So it's really such a broad world of inspiration. There is also industrial stuff, like, classically known by everyone, like Nine Inch Nails. But then on the road of becoming industrial musician, I discovered a lot of great acts, more independent and more underground, even local ones that were just like absolutely amazing to me to learn that there is this great music out there. And so, so the question, I feel like we would have to sit for probably 20 hours and just listen to it and go one by one of the playlists, that I have saved, and it would probably not still be enough time.
Well, but we can focus a little bit on industrial, because to me, I think part of the reason I've always been fascinated by industrial music is it seems to spread out and incorporate so many other genres, because when you find a band like Pigface, for example, so many acts worked with them, and I feel like the industrial community is this really collaborative, inclusive community where you have people that play metal, people that do maybe more electronica style stuff. Like, it just seems to me like this really interesting, almost the traditional idea of the artistic collective.
Yeah.
Where people with lots of different talents that may not traditionally be like it's not necessarily going to be people who are in ministry. You could bring in a country musician maybe that's going to play with somebody, Jello Biafra, like so many different acts and artists, and it feels like such a artistically rewarding genre, I guess.
It is, and it's also very friendly. It's very inviting. So it doesn't disqualify you because you are from a different world. On the contrary, it takes you in and it welcomes you with such warm greetings, and it finds the place for you, which is what you said. And it ends up in such great, beautiful creations. And they are not to be compared to those other genres, because coming from so many different sources, when people gather together to create, it will, the whatever they work on, it will become something that have never been before.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's important, because I think part of what is great about industrial music is there is other types of music or other lifestyles even aren't necessarily excited about things that are different.
Yes, exactly.
But
exactly.
I feel like people that are involved in that expression of music get really excited when they see something different.
Yes, and it's very noticeable, and it's great. And I feel it gives the platform to not just musically, involved people, but also to cultures and to, those issues that we have every day. Do we feel like we belong, or do we stand out? Do we want to belong, right? We all do. So then this industrial culture gives you the platform for all those people. I've heard the cool expression, outcasts.
Yes,
those outcasts to come in and to finally find family. whether it's musical family or cultural family. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, and it seems to embrace a lot of different forms of expression, because very often you'll see, visual art, graphic arts, all kinds of, lots of poetry, lots of writing. It's more than just music. It really is its own cultural movement.
Yes, definitely. I agree with that. And it's, again, I feel honored, that I'm part of this culture. I have not known that this will become. And when I started brainstorming what I could do as a one-person band, there was not many ideas that I would have. You cannot perform with live drums and play keyboards and play guitar and then sing and then do all the other production stuff at the same time. So I had to figure out what would be the world of music that I could settle on in order for me to perform. And industrial seemed like that's the one, electronic industrial music. And starting, as I mentioned before, I was not very, certain that what I do will resonate with everybody else. And then when it did, I felt like, wow, this is my new family, musical family. So I definitely, from this other angle, of artistic desires, it is just so awesome.
So there's a visual component to your live show as well, projected images, things going on behind you.
Yes.
What sort of things did you put together for that, and what kind of process was it to determine what you wanted up there on stage with you? And two, are there any filmmakers or anything that you sort of took inspiration from, any films that you saw and thought, I like this style, I like the way these images are put together?
So with ideas and inspirations, it's sort of, what it was brought by mind and by everything that was, gathered by my experience so far. But also, and big part, I'm collaborating on those videos with a great artist. His name is Joel Lopez, and he has video production thing that he's starting. It's called Lumbra Productions. And so, he's my friend. So one day we met up and I'm like, listen, I need some visual stuff for those songs that I'm making. And we talked, we met several times to discuss what's needed and what kind of, effect I want those videos to have on people, on audience. And then, we were tweaking it together. He was bringing it so greatly. I cannot even ever express how amazing this artist is. And long story short, we came up with those, different visual ideas for each of the songs. And that's what is today. So, yeah.
And the process of, you said it took you about 7 months, I think, to get to the point where it was time for your first live performance.
Yes.
Coordinating everything, getting everything on the same page. What were some of the sort of biggest stumbling blocks for you? Or did you just take it as, well, I'm learning as I go and putting it all together?
So it definitely was learning as I go, and I would have those moments of impasse because I would not know how to figure things out. Simple things, but very difficult things, such as how do I play guitar while I still should play keyboard right now? So there was a lot of, rewiring and a lot of planning that was suddenly involved in making sure that I can take those songs that I wrote and now play them live. So, there is two keyboards that I use. One is synth and one is the keyboard, the MIDI controller. And so even simple things such as, how do I plug in all the sounds when I only have one hand free right now because I'm doing something else with another? It was pretty complex. It was wild process to put this together, but in the end, it works, and it's fascinating. I would not give ability to play live as much as I can for anything. I feel it's a huge part of energy on stage. So the more I'm able to create live, the better the show is, the stronger I feel and the happier I am and the more fulfilled and the more I take from it. And I feel if I do, then the audience does as well.
Well, and I think that was an important component of seeing you live. It wasn't just that the music was good, it was that you were able to still project energy, I guess, while being busy on stage. Which goes back to what you said about multitasking, but it's not just multitasking. It's multitasking and performing, because I've seen electronic acts that are primarily a dude or two dudes or whatever with a rack of keyboards, and they're maybe jumping up and down a little bit, but mostly they're focused on hitting the right things at the right times, and they're relying on the lights and the bass and whatever else to provide the energy, where in your live show, you were still providing that energy while doing all of that.
Yes, and I feel this is natural. This is just who I am. Performing to me is the connection.
Yeah.
So the big part of why I love performing is because I can connect with people. So that's just there. That is there, and this is happening, regardless of that I have so many other things to do. And that's why it took me so long to go and play my first show, because I just knew that the moment I go on stage, I will forget absolutely everything that I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. You had to get to the point where it was just instinct.
I had to. And, it's very important, because you miss one thing. When there is so many instruments to take in account, you miss one thing and everything can go wrong. So I've had shows like this, and of course I won't reveal. The show must go on.
Sure.
But I've had shows when I would mess something up pretty badly, and I was like, oh no. But then you have to keep going, and so many cables, so many wirings, so many, looping, and just mind-blowing to me even still, even though I've been doing this for more than a year now. I'm still like, wow, how am I doing this?
Well, and that's a critical thing that, again, maybe you just have or you don't, to be able to recover from an error and keep going. Because if you power through it, I think chances are the audience probably doesn't even pick up on it.
Yeah. Yes, but I also learned that it's that, again, it's the energy. So errors happen in our life. And so if the error happens and audience picks up on it, it's just an error. And I feel in life and every day, it's not mistakes that we make or errors that we cause, but it's our attitude towards those errors that we make that makes us who we are. So, it's this, I feel like I could pause my show and say, oh, I'm sorry, something went wrong. It's not the way I wanted to do this. Or I could keep going and make the best of what the momentum gives. And those are usually the best shows,
Sure. Well, and by the time the next song starts, nobody's even thinking about it.
Yeah, I don't think people pick up on this unless there is a big error on the, venue side when the thing just goes down. I've had this happen in, it was in Omaha and Nebraska. The whole system just went down.
Oh, no.
And we all had to reboot it, and there was a lot of people at this show. It was during my Code Blue tour with Swear Machine, back in the spring and summer. And it was independent, smaller tour, but it was amazing. And this happened, and I felt very wild. I felt like I want to go back there and play even harder, to give to those people, what they are waiting for. And it was just great. The energy was it was so hot that night in this venue, and it was just mind-blowing how amazingly people responded even to this mistake, to this error that wasn't even my error. It was the venue, but the show stopped.
Now, in touring, how long would you consider yourself to have been a touring musician? Were you touring previous to this musical endeavor?
So I did a little bit here and there with the metal band I used to be with, but I would just say that real touring life began in 2019 for me.
Okay.
It's like a real touring, from very independent tour when you go in your car, a van in my case, and you go with your team and with a dog, because I take my dog whenever I can with me, and just setting up, getting down, going to hotel, to the tour with Pigface. That was the tour bus tour, which was great because I didn't have to worry about driving. And so, yeah, I think 2019 makes that mark for me.
And as far as being out on tour, are there things about that lifestyle that maybe you didn't expect, or maybe you loved more than you knew you would? Like, what was your discovery of that life?
So playing shows every night is a great thing for me. I just love playing live. And that is something that I didn't even expect will feed me in the way it did. It was very uplifting and energizing. And sometimes, you get tired because it's all the load-ins, load-outs. And, you are on the road. You are far away from your everyday life. It can get difficult, but the moment I was ready to go on stage and playing, I was revived. Every night it was like I was reborn. So that was something that I knew to the point, but I just was mind blown how strong it was. That surprised me, definitely. Other than this, when I was going on each of those two tours that I've had this past year, I decided that I will not have any expectations because I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I figured, it's best not to expect anything or expect hardship. So expect that I will be more tired or all the bad things. And I like to be prepared like this mentally, because then no matter what happens, you end up being fine, right?
Yeah,
so I felt that realistic approach to this. And then, it was just great. I mean, there was hardship. Of course, there was hardship. There was, element of being tired and, again, missing everyday things that you would not have on the road. But everything else was great. Great.
I think that's an important point of view that you have to have when doing anything new, or really anything, is that be prepared for the worst but hope for the best. That's such an old saying, I guess, but it really holds true. It's not pessimism, it's practicality.
Oh, it's definitely not pessimism. I steer away from pessimism. It's the realism, of life and preparation.
Yes,
it's
yes.
Very important. Very important. And yes, as you said, that exactly, that resonates with everything about touring. I feel it's very important. And it's funny, Martin Atkins from Pigface. You know Martin, right?
Okay, so real quick, let me give you a little aside about my experience. As an artist, he is somebody that blows me away. And at the show, now I spoke to you. We had a brief conversation, got the selfie, and 2 occasions, Martin Atkins was within arm's reach of me, and I've interviewed Ric Flair and Sting and professional wrestlers and actors. I've interviewed all kinds of people. I could not talk to Martin Atkins. I got starstruck. I'm not even kidding. And I felt like such a dum-dum. And my wife was making fun of me because she actually went to the restroom at one point, and Martin, this was while you were playing, he walked out, stood right in front of me, and was sort of dancing a little bit to your set, watched you for a little while. He's right in front of me. I should have just said, "Hey, how you doing? Nice to see you." I couldn't do a thing. He's right in front of me, and then he walks backstage. And I went over to the merch table later on and ended up talking to the guy that was working over there. It turns out he's Martin Atkins' son.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yes, Ian. Yeah.
Was so nice. And I told him, I was like, man, your dad was like too much. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't talk to him. And he was like, no, just after the show, stick around. He's doing this thing. Just say hi. It's fine. It'll be fine. And I couldn't, after the show was done, we were both, we're old and tired. So we were like, we got to go home. But yeah, I couldn't do it. And everything I've heard, he's the nicest guy.
Yes, exactly. And funny little fact is that back in 2016, actually, I graduated from Chicago's SAE Institute, which is, I finished music business program there, and Martin was my professor.
Okay.
That's how I got to know Martin, and I got to know Martin, closely, because we've had those classes, and the school had the program was very small. So sometimes there was only 5 students in the classroom, and I learned that he's very approachable and has a lot of great knowledge, such as, giving those advices to how to survive different elements of being a musician, a touring musician, recording musician, or human in general.
Yeah, every interview I've read, he seems very not just brilliant, but also just a good human.
Yeah, he is. He's very open-hearted, and he has very open mind as well. It's just great human. One of probably greatest humans out there in the spectrum of things. As far as I know. And I'm, again, very thankful to know him, very thankful to learn from him. A lot of lessons that I was able to gather because of Martin Atkins. So, yeah.
Well, next time he's in town, I'll get it together and I'll say hi to him.
Oh, yes, definitely. Hey. Or come, to any other show, perhaps. I'm not sure what Big Face plans are. I've heard that there are some plans for the future, but I know that this is not the last time Martin Atkins is doing a public thing. He does a lot of speeches as well. So maybe one of the speech tours that he has.
Oh, yeah, that would be fantastic. I love that's one of the great things about so many of the artists that I sort of grew up loving is that now they're doing lots of spoken word tours or reflections on their careers or things like that, and it's very interesting because I love the music or the filmmaking or whatever, but I also love the thought processes behind it.
Of course, all the details,
yes.
Those tasty little things that every day we cannot share or or know or learn. Yeah, those are the things that only the person who lives through them can tell us about, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, we got to talk. You mentioned earlier Code Blue Reloaded.
Yes.
Which is coming out in March. The pre-order goes up in February, is that right?
Yes, February 20th will be the pre-order on my Bandcamp page, and then March 20th, the big release is going to happen. There is a lot of great talent that I was honored with to have remix my songs. So I'm very excited for this album to come out.
Now, I've always been curious about this, what is the remix process as you being the artist that originated this music, sort of giving your creations to other people to manipulate and change around and put their own touch on? What's that process like? Like, it's got to be exciting to see how other people interpret your work.
Oh, it's very exciting. It is so awesome. It's almost as exciting as writing your own songs, first, because it's like having your own babies being reborn. That's how I like to describe this. But process is, fairly easy, at least on my end, because I prepare the packs for the remixes and I send them to artists who are interested or whom I get in touch with and ask. And then they do their own take on the songs that I've written. And a lot of those songs, when you hear the Code Blue Reloaded, are very different. So the Code Blue that is now remixed is completely different. And I have 3 different remixes of Code Blue song itself. So with each Bandcamp download and each physical purchase of the album, there will be additional 10 songs, 10 remixes coming out, which means there is 20 songs together that I will be releasing in March.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
Each of those songs is a different take by different artists. So I'm super excited to share this with the world. And so many great, talented, artists did participate in the project. It's mind-blowing. Some of those artists are underground artists that are emerging, and some of them are known to the scene already. So altogether, the mix of the powers, and gravities is just such amazing, empowering thing that, I can't wait till March.
Well, and that's another exciting aspect, like we were talking about before, where it's that thing where somebody's familiar with you, and now they get this new collaboration with all of these other artists, and they get to expand out into people that they may not know about and learn other things. I mean, it really is a good world to be in musically, I think.
It is a great world. And, talking about collaborations quickly, there is a Joy Tips collaboration. I'm not sure you've heard about them.
Of Glass Eyes.
Yeah,
yes.
So they remixed, the Joy Tips remixed Glass Eyes, but furthermore, the Joy Tips is another collaborative, entity. It's basically a bunch of different musicians coming from bands such as Ministry, such as, I don't even know. There is so many creative, beautiful, talented people in this band. And so the Joy Tips is another collaborative force that is awesome as an example of industrial scene being this welcoming place that feels like home.
Well, before we go, give us where we can find you online. I know, obviously, Instagram, Facebook, all over the place. You've got a website. What's your web address, and where can we pre-order Code Blue Reloaded?
Yeah, so my website is iyatoyah.com, which is IYATOYAH.com. And the reason I'm spelling it is because I know for some people it's hard to figure out what my name is. So I will quickly say that when spoken out loud, my name means, in Polish, it means it's just me. But yes, it is IYATOYAH. So the website is simple, and then all the social media that I have are basically the same handle, I Ya Toyah. And my Bandcamp is the same name, I Ya Toyah on Bandcamp, and that's where you can pre-order the Code Blue Reloaded album starting February 20th.
Well, I Ya Toyah, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been great talking to you and learning about your journey as a musician to get to that stage in Atlanta, I guess.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It means a lot to me. And, thank you for supporting the scene, industrial scene, independent scene, musical scene, all the arts. And, I'm very grateful for being on your show tonight.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. All right, everybody. So go check out all the social media. I put links to everything in the show notes. Go order or buy digitally or whatever your copy of Code Blue. It's awesome. I've listened to it several times already since I got it at the show, and I am looking forward to Code Blue Reloaded, the remix album that was mentioned. What a great conversation. And you know what? Prior to recording this day that I recorded that episode, I listened to Mark Maron talking to Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, and he talked a little bit before the interview about how he got nervous and about how, sometimes things go wrong, sometimes he just doesn't want to do it anymore or whatever. And it really kind of invigorated me and made me excited to talk to people. And that interview with I Ya Toyah got me excited and wanting to interview people. I want to talk to more people. I want to talk to different people. I've got one interview that has been sort of floating around for well over a year now, probably 2 years at this point, that has been a little difficult to sort of schedule and figure out that I'm going to make happen. I want to have, if you remember a couple of years ago, I talked to local legend Jim Stacy, and I've sort of sent out feelers about having him back on the show because I'd love to talk to him again. I think both of our perspectives have changed a lot since that initial interview. I want to talk to more people. So if you've got a project, if you've got a thing, if you've got a band, if you've got a book, if you've got whatever, shoot me an email at phantomtroublemaker@gmail.com. Shoot me a message on Facebook, just Dave West, or shoot the Needless Things Podcast Facebook page a message. I'd love to talk to some more people. I'm hyped for talking now. So come back next week. I love you guys.
Thank you for listening to the Needless Things Podcast. You're the best. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Downcast, or in the ears of a Trader Vic's employee. Love you. Mean it. Uh-huh.